Totally Football Show. Today, Carabao Cup. The round was fourth, the strings were second, and the quarterfinals beckoned for some, but not Liverpool, who lose again. We round up all the midweek action and ask what awaits on Premier League Matchday 10. Will Liverpool get slot-shamed again against Villa? Will Bournemouth celebrate Halloween at City with another croupy display? So many questions in this Totally Football Show. It's Thursday, the 30th of October. Hey, Jay.
Hey,
Jay Harris, it's Halloween.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. Trick or treat.
It was a trick for Spurs last night.
Oh, nicely done with the football. Yeah. Charlie Eccleshare is here too. Will you be going out searching for
tomorrow,
candy?
Yeah.
Tomorrow? Is it tomorrow?
Yeah.
Not today?
I think we're going tomorrow.
Is it what day? It's 30th? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there another day at the other end?
There is, yeah.
So not Halloween today.
Spoiler alert,
very much
James.
tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll
But it's
take-
good to see that you're already in the Halloween spirit.
Yeah, I might.
A day early.
I might just go on my own today and just test out
I
how
bet
people are prepared for
There
tomorrow.
have been places round my way, and indeed businesses that have been all dolled up with cobwebs and bouncy spiders and the works.
And if you go out trick-or-treating the day before, people aren't going to be prepared.
Yeah.
You can exploit that like a preparedness.
You might get better quality sweets that way.
You might not get anything at all. Is another option. Tom Williams is also here with us.
Hello, James.
Hello to
Happy
you, Tom.
Halloween Eve.
Happy Halloween Eve. Halloween, All Souls Eve, essentially.
Indeed.
Not sure what you're up to on Monday, the 23rd of March, by the way, 2026. But if you are in and around Leicester Square, then at Leicester Square Theatre that night, we'll be doing one of our Totally Football Show lives. If you'd like further details, go to leicestersquaretheatre.com or click on the link in the episode description. Charlie, it's been a while since we've seen you. You've been off doing tennis and that.
No, I was largely touring with Football Cliches pod live shows. Yeah.
Your live shows,
Yeah.
were they really successful?
They were pretty successful. An 8.
Did you play the Leicester Square Theatre?
We didn't, but I have played there before with the View from the Lane Spurs podcast. Damn good venue.
Yeah, great crowd.
Great crowd, knowledgeable crowd, lovely people down there. Yes, I was there. I was touring, and then I was in Wales for my dad's 70th birthday.
Oh, that's
for the last
nice.
few days, which was
Great
lovely.
crowd there as well.
Great crowd, yeah.
Great crowd.
Very knowledgeable about our
Excellent. Jay, sorry, I'm busy here chitting and chatting, but you've got to be somewhere very, very soon.
Yeah, it's fine.
Where's that?
I've got to go and meet someone.
All right.
Can't reveal who though.
Okay. Let's talk Carabao Cup then, because there were 8 games this midweek, including Liverpool losing their 6th game in 7 against Palace for the 3rd or 2.5 times this season. Into the Carabao Cup we go. Jeremy Pino there. Was this even a surprise?
Not hugely. I mean, Liverpool made 10 changes, I think.
All right.
And have been in dismal form. I mean, I guess maybe there'd have been a hope that freshening things up and the pressure being off a little bit, because this wasn't a kind of league or Champions League game. And they did actually start reasonably well.
Right.
Had some chances. But no, not really, given the form they're in and how good a team Palace are.
Palace winning 3-0 at Anfield. As I mentioned, they've already beat them in the league and, of course, on penalties in the Community Shield. Glasgow going with a pretty strong team for Palace, and not sure what the thinking was for Slot, but most people have assumed that he's thinking, well, I've got Villa at the weekend, and then Real Madrid is it in the Champions League, and then Man City straight after that. So here's a good opportunity to maybe rest some players. But when you're in the kind of form that they are in, Liverpool, is it a dangerous game?
I mean, yeah, as the result proved, and afterwards Slot kind of complained about the lack of depth in the Liverpool squad, making a comparison with Chelsea notably.
Right.
And I think, in fairness to Slot, Liverpool do probably have a squad that is not quite as deep as Arsenal's and Chelsea's and Manchester City's. But when you make the decision to leave literally all your senior players in the stands,
Right.
play the kids with no backup on the bench, that is on you. And if he was worried about the strength of his second string, he could have just sent out a stronger team, or at the very least made sure that some of the senior players are on the bench. And the decision to match up Palace's shape with this completely experimental formation, a back three of Wataru Endo, Joe Gomez and Andy Robertson, is the kind of thing that Arsenal didn't do that when they played Palace at the weekend, albeit with their first choice 11. It's the kind of thing that City don't do. And again, I think it it kind of added to this impression you have that Slot isn't entirely sure what he's doing at the moment. The formation changes week to week. He's kind of trying things. Florian Wirtz is getting bumped all over the pitch. It's a 4-4-2, then it's back to the 4-2-3-1, then it's a 4-3-3, and it's just, none of it's working.
Well, and I think that's a really important point. The fact that the bench was so sparse did feel a little bit like a white flag before the game had started. But I think that also the big but there that people will be screaming as they listen to this is, but didn't you spend £400 million in the summer? And yes, I know there's the net spend, but we're still talking about, a couple of $100 million. So to have a threadbare squad seems pretty odd after that expenditure.
The 40, 50 million that they didn't spend, meanwhile, was suiting up for the opposition in this game.
I think that's crucial. You could now make a pretty good argument that they just focused on the wrong areas of their squad in the summer. Obviously, they're unfortunate that Leone suffered an ACL. I'm sure he probably would have played in this game if he'd been available. But it's a risky situation where, Wataru Endo is essentially your fourth choice centre-back because Konate's always had injury issues throughout his career. I mean, Joe Gomez has as well. So you're always pushing it pretty close when you've got those players. You're sort of relying on them to play week in, week out, and you can't really give them any rest.
Van Dijk's 34 as well.
Palace, though, into the quarter-finals where they'll be facing Czechs notes. Arsenal, who beat them just last weekend. But a fine performance here. Tom, you were watching this, I think.
Yes, they were good, Palace. I mean, as Charlie was saying, the first half an hour was pretty even. Neither team created very much. Liverpool gifted Palace the opener in that Daichi Kamada plays a ball into the box to Daniel Munoz, who can't quite control it. And Joe Gomez just prods it straight into Ismail Assar's path. He knocks it away. But then 4 minutes later, Palace scored a beautifully constructed goal. And it came from another straight vertical pass. Lovely little interchange, reverse pass from Yeremy Pino into Sarr. He tucks it away. And then, second half, Liverpool, which didn't exist. They didn't get close to Palace. You thought at some point there'll be some kind of reaction, and there wasn't. Liverpool get a player sent off. Maranello sent off for the second time in 2 games in his fledgling Liverpool career.
So he had an appearance last season for them against PSV in the Champions League and got sent off almost immediately for denying a goal-scoring opportunity. Said Arne Slot after that game, he will learn from this. Cut to this week.
Last night,
Amara Dogso Nallo, as he's nicknamed by the lads.
Yeah, so he's had another lesson in last man defending, and then Pino scores the third, and Palace were worthy winners.
Just on Sarr quickly, hasn't he scored against Liverpool in every game this season? And then it also reminded me
7 in 9 career appearances.
I was going to say, do you remember when Liverpool were unbeaten in the league under Jurgen Klopp? Watford, he scored twice in that game. Yeah. So he's clearly just they hate to
play Liverpool.
Yeah. When they see him in the lineup, they're terrified.
Sorry, I now had Freed from Desire going through my head. Yeremy Pino, that was his first goal. The third goal, that was his first goal for Palace. So
and I think Pino's been really impressed. Every time I watch Palace, he stands out. He's very kind of busy, always kind of trying things, very creative, and you sense that he has been a real positive force for Palace this season. The stats haven't quite been there yet, but now that he's off the mark, perhaps they will be.
Elsewhere in the Carabao Cup, the cup holders beat the Europa League holders. Newcastle 2, Tottenham 0. Anyone watch this one?
I watched this one.
Did you, Jay?
Yes.
All right. Aaron Ramsdale in goal for Newcastle.
Yeah,
Hello.
He made a really good save from Pape Matar in the second half as well. But otherwise, he wasn't too busy. Spurs were a little bit disjointed, I think it's fair to say, in attack. But obviously, this game is all about the Spence gate or boot gate or whatever you want to call it. It's all about that.
I remember, was it Roberto Carlos doing up his shoelaces instead of marking
Thierry Henry, 2006 World Cup.
This was similarly.
I think he was actually pulling up his socks,
Was
Roberto
he?
Carlos.
But it took an incredible amount of time to do it.
Yeah.
And then Henry at the back post.
Henry at the back post from Zidane's cross.
Yeah. Wasn't that the time they combined for a goal, Zidane and Henry?
Well, funny enough, that's what people said after the game. But actually, Zidane had set up Henry for another goal, I think at Euro 2000.
Wow.
But that wasn't counted for some reason. But I've watched it and it was definitely an assist. So.
Tom wrote the book on that.
He literally did,
one of those,
I'm glad you myth-busted that.
The knowledge comes in handy.
Anyway, certain to go down in the history books as well. Djed Spence doing up his laces. They did wait for him before they took the corner, but he didn't seem in any particular hurry to retake his position.
So he took, I think, about 40 seconds or so to do his boot. And I was reading my colleague Elias Burke, who was at the game last night. I was reading his piece, And what maybe was not picked up on TV, but he saw at the game, was that Spence had struggled throughout that first half with his boot anyways, even before that incident. So he clearly needed to fix it. So he takes quite a long time, and then he's jogging back into the box, and clearly the referee must have already blown the whistle. So I think Spurs were assuming, right, we're going to be allowed to get back into position, the ref's going to blow the whistle, then the delivery's going to come in. As Spence turns his back, Tonali whips it into the box, and they score. So depends on your opinion. I think it's maybe bad sportsmanship, but you should also, the captain should probably also clarify in that moment, referee, when he's finished doing his boot or whatever, take it on your whistle, right? Everyone who plays Sunday League knows that. You scream at the ref on your whistle. So I think there's a couple of things that went wrong for Spurs there. But I also think the actual mistake is what leads to the corner, where I think it's Elanga whips across into the box, and Kinski, the second choice goalkeeper, can claim it, but doesn't tell Kevin Danso. So Danso clears it out for a corner. And then they're looking at each other saying, oh, you should have told me, oh, I didn't hear you, etc. So yes, the Spence incident is unfortunate. Maybe it's even a little bit silly, but it was such a silly error before that, which I think leads them into that situation in the first place.
Kinski also, I have this game on, and Kinski also for the second goal looks a little all at sea as he tries to come out, doesn't get anywhere near it, and Voltemada just kind of pops in a very gentle header that kind of trickles into the net with him out of position.
And it looks like Danso had a bit of a go of him for that goal as well, saying, I'm sort of ducking because I'm thinking you're coming and you're getting it. If you don't think you're going to get it, sort of shout and I'll contest the header.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks ago, a lot of Spurs fans wanted Kinski to have a chance in the team because he's definitely got a better passing range than Vicario. But I think Vicario's performances against Monaco and even against Everton last week, and coupled with this, have sort of reminded people, okay, Vicario has his faults, but he's definitely a better shot stopper. And in moments like that, he's the person that you want.
All right, and he'll be back in at the weekend. There's no illness or anything. This was
he wasn't in the squad. I don't think Thomas Frank explained why, but I'd expect that he was just rested.
I think he also was rested in previous rounds of this competition. So yeah. Was this a classic Nick Voltemada game?
I actually don't think he had that many touches. I just think Newcastle overpowered Spurs at times. Harvey Barnes had a fantastic shot, cannon in off the bar and out. They were just on top of Spurs pretty much from the off, which is probably going to happen when you go to St James's Park. They're going to be up for it. They're the holders. It's a really hard place to go. But I don't think Spurs helped themselves at all. There was a pass, I think inside the first 5 minutes, that Xavi Simons played. It was a simple crossfield switch to Djed Spence. He somehow hooks it 20 yards behind him. And that sort of sums up Simons' career at Spurs so far. There's flashes of brilliance. There was a moment in the second half where he was driving forward and he had a shot and Ramsdale tipped it over the bar. But then he'll do something really silly. And there are a couple of times where he looks so desperate to make an impression that he's maybe making the wrong decision. And then there was another really brilliantly crafted move, which ends with Bergvall putting a cross for Richarlison into the 6-yard box. And it almost looks as if Richarlison pulls out of hitting it when he's like 6 yards away. So everything just seemed to be a little bit out of sync with Spurs. I think there were moments in that game that they looked quite good attacking, but then there were also moments where they just couldn't string two passes together. It was a bit confusing.
Yeah, I mean, Richarlison wasn't great. He looked pretty off it throughout, which I imagine would have pleased Aaron Ramsdale because those two have a bit of history from North London derbies.
Yeah, of course, the beef.
Well, Richarlison also got booked after the
after the goal, wasn't it? Yeah.
And it's just so needless. And, you know, Sky, after, I think it was at half-time, sort of showed what happened in the aftermath of the goal. Porro's the captain. He's going up to Chris Kavanagh, the referee. And I think Porro and maybe Brennan Johnson or Bentancur, whoever it is, tell Richarlison 3 or 4 times, leave the ref alone, leave the ref alone. Leave it.
Physically shoved it.
And he wouldn't listen. We should also say that Thomas Frank said that he thinks Chris Kavanagh made a mistake and he got that wrong with the goal. And it's very rare, I think, for Frank to come out and criticise a referee's decision. A lot of the time he's like, these things happen, they even themselves out over the course of the season.
This is for the Djed Spence goal?
For the Djed Spence goal, yeah.
On the subject of people picking up needless yellow cards, how about Liam Delap picking up Chelsea's traditional sending off in their quite remarkable game away at Wolves? So this was the world champions taking on the only professional team in England yet to win a football match, taking a 3-0 lead, but ending up riding out a 4-3 scoreline with 10 men after Liam Delap has got himself sent off for... Yeah, I mean, the first yellow is not particularly necessary, but the second is, I mean, that's
I mean,
very naughty.
One of the most avoidable double yellows you will ever see, in that they're both just for kind of, well, the first one is just for like a squabble on the edge of the box.
They're both petulance, basically.
Both petulance, really. A player who's just got back from injury, I guess trying to get into the rhythm of the game, is not getting much change out of the player who's marking him. And I mean, he was lucky in a way to get away with only a yellow card for the first one, because I think there were a couple of sort of tangles, and then he kind of, lashes out a little bit. And then moments later, again, challenging for a high ball, sees that Emmanuel Agbadou is going to beat him to the ball, and just totally needlessly follows through with his shoulder. And, Chelsea find themselves reduced to 10 men again. And it is becoming a recurring issue. And it is the kind of thing that you would expect from a very young team, perhaps with a lack of leaders on the pitch. But it's happening so recurrently that you think, Maresca really needs to get to grips with it.
5th red card of the season. He will now miss this weekend's trip to Tottenham.
And Chelsea have been crying out for him to come back because they've been playing without a centre forward ever since he's been injured.
All right.
Self-perpetuating as well, because I'm sure opposition teams are saying, try and wind them up. There's a chance they'll lash out like this. And I think part of the reason Maresca was so annoyed about it, and he spoke, I think he described Delap as selfish or something like this, which is, to be digging out a player, you're clearly going to be quite annoyed. And I think for him, part of his frustration must be that he will think that it kind of reflects on him, that there's a sense that what's he doing? Why is his team continually doing this? Because that tends to be where the buck stops. And I guess as well, he did get sent off himself for kind of not being able to control his emotions in a different way after the Liverpool win. But
that's also true.
Yeah, extremely annoying for them.
This happened a little bit under Arteta at Arsenal as well. I know there was a lot of thing about some of the red cards they were picking up last season, but I remember when he first took over, there was a spell where Xhaka would get sent off in a game, Gabriel would get sent off in a game, and the criticism then was that Arsenal were also a very young side, similarly to Chelsea are now, but it was a sense that they were too emotional, and that they sort of needed that emotion to get them through in games, but that's ultimately what cost them in the 22-23 season.
They didn't get that many. It was more before then that they were getting a lot of reds.
But that period of time, including the 22-23 season, they were just perceived to be extremely emotional. Yeah. Whereas now they're just sort of
what are they now, Charlie? You watched them against who were they up against? Brighton.
Yeah,
2-0.
Sort of double screening. Yes, I mean this was a different kind of 2-0 to the ones
kind of Arsenal as well. 10 changes.
Yeah, well, exactly. So they made 10 changes and they looked way more open than normal. And recently they've not even been conceding shots on target. This wasn't that kind of game. I mean, Brighton had some really good chances. They really
3 shots on target.
Well, I mean, it's an absolute avalanche. But that doesn't also reflect that, there was one that went wide in the first half, 1-on-1. And there were just gaps. They were basically breaking in a way that you never really see against the normal Arsenal team because they just don't leave those kinds of gaps. But Brighton were able to exploit that, but didn't take the chances.
Among the 10 changes was 15-year-old Max Dowman making his first start.
Yes.
First start. So 15 years and 302 days on Wednesday, he became the youngest ever starter for Arsenal, youngest player ever to start for a Premier League side, although, of course, this wasn't in the Premier League. No player has ever started for a Premier League club before the age of 16 before. How did he do?
He was really good. I mean, it's one of those where you're slightly... you don't want to just judge him by the standards of he's a 15-year-old, and so even the fact that he's kind of on the pitch is amazing. But just if you just say, well, how did this winger do? He was really effective. I mean, some really nice touches, beat his man a few times, and they were targeting him. There were a few kind of reducers on him in a way of like, how are you gonna take this getting kicked? Welcome to the big leagues, son. But yeah, he was really impressive. Nearly won a penalty. I mean, he could have, which is one of his special skills. He's already done it in the Premier League. In fact, this season, he could have got booked for that. Maybe. I mean, it was one where he kind of tries to initiate the contact with the defender, but that came after he'd absolutely left another defender in his wake. He can do the thing that Saka can do as well. He's got a decent right foot, so he's not as predictable as some of those left-footed right wingers who I mean, yes, that is what he wants to do, is cut inside, but if you leave loads of space, he's perfectly happy to go on the outside. So yeah, I mean, an incredible talent. The fact that he's starting a game against, this isn't like it was Arsenal at home against a lower league team, against Brighton, who, yes, were rotated, but this was a big level up a big step up for him. And he was really good.
Excellent. Arsenal, as mentioned, will be facing Palace in the quarterfinals. Newcastle's opponents will be Fulham at St James's Park. Fulham, who very nearly lost a fifth straight game on Tuesday night, or at least came quite close. They were playing Wycombe. They went behind a goal, equalised to force a shootout where their French keeper, Benjamin Lecomte, I was careful with that, saved 3 Chairboys penalties. Wow.
He did, yes. I mean, he was Fulham's only summer signing for much of the transfer window. Then they brought Kevin in from Shakhtar Donetsk right at the end. But obviously fulfilled his role as backup goalkeeper. A word also for Issa Diop, another Frenchman, who scored the winning penalty in the shootout. It was one of the best penalties I think has ever been scored in the history of football. Just an absolute Kevin Pressman / Harry Maguire rocket into the top left corner. The penalty shootout went to sudden death. Was the last Fulham penalty or the last Wycombe penalty had been missed. The first 2 penalties in sudden death were both missed, or rather saved, and it was like, okay, here comes the big lumbering centre-back. I wonder how he's going to get on. Absolutely smashed it top bins.
Excellent. So Fulham go through to take on Newcastle. This will be quarterfinals week starting December the 15th. Chelsea's opponents will be Cardiff City, who are the only team outside the top flight remaining in the Carabao Cup. They ended Wrexham's run on Tuesday night. The other Welsh side that was in the 4th round was Swansea City, who lost 3-1 at home to Man City. Took the lead in fine fashion through Gonzalo Franco. Woof, what a goal. But then Man City came back at them with Doku, Marmoush, and Ryan Cherky. And through they go. Who did Man City get in the quarterfinals? They've got Brentford. Brentford, who ended Grimsby's Fairy Tale Cup run by going to Cleethorpes and winning 5-0. Like most of the top flight sides, they made many changes, Brentford, 9 in fact, but they were 3-0 up at half-time. Among those coming in was Reece Nelson. Reece Nelson, who was making his first start on loan from Arsenal. He's been injured. And he got a goal and an assist. Looked very good. Yeah,
it was a good game. I was quite surprised they sort of cruised through this so easily. I was actually out on Tuesday with a friend who's a Man United fan. And I said, Brentford are 4-0 up, and the look of horror in his face that they'd been knocked out by Grimsby. I think sort of an interesting subplot to this game is that Fabio Carvalho started, and there's been a few whispers this week that he's not particularly happy with his game time. He certainly, joined Brentford from Liverpool last summer. He didn't play too much. I think he had shoulder surgery as well. But I don't really know where he fits in their system. Damsgaard's pretty nailed on to be the creative attacking midfielder. I don't know if he's quite a right fit further forward as an out-and-out striker partnering Igor Thiago. But so to see him score, I think was good.
He won a penalty and converted it.
But it'd be interesting to see if that's sort of enough to keep him satisfied for the time being.
Okay. He looked quite annoyed after scoring, didn't he? Yeah. It wasn't the most effusive. It was a pointedly subdued celebration.
But he's just an interesting story to keep an eye on, because when he was at Fulham, he was rated really highly. I think he played loads for them in the Championship when they got promoted under Marco Silva. Maybe moves to Liverpool too early, but if you remember, did he score a winner or an equaliser against Newcastle?
Yeah,
and everyone thought, he's going to be a massive part of their project under Klopp. And then since then, he's played for, I think, Leipzig on loan, Hull. He's now obviously things are not working out at Brentford. So it's been a strange couple of years, because 3-4 years ago, people thought he was going to be the next big thing.
Wow. Well, also, you mentioned Reece Nelson and just linking that to Max Dowman. Reece Nelson was thought to be...
He was the Max Dowman.
He was, yeah. Obviously not at quite such a young age, but he was the guy. But so much of this, and I was just talking to Art de Roche, who covers Arsenal for The Athletic and also has a big interest in the youth teams. And we were just saying so much of this does come down to physicality, and you can't really predict that. Poor Reece Nelson has had so many hamstring injuries to the point where there's just a real cap on what he can achieve. And Smith Rowe and Saka came through together, and they were, kind of on a par. And then Smith Rowe, his body didn't quite hold up to the rigors of Premier League football in the way that Saka has. Max Dowman, that will kind of be the decisive factor. Clearly, he's got the talent, but can he withstand what's required to be a Saka or a player at that kind of level?
Hey, Monday night, news broke that Brendan Rodgers had resigned as Celtic manager. Celtic, who this weekend were beaten by Scottish Premiership leaders Hearts of Midlothian 3-1. The Hoops thus falling to 8 points behind runaway SPL top side Hearts. They were also knocked out of the Champions League in the playoff stage by Kairat. So it's not gone too well for Brendan, and the breakup has been less than amicable, with both sides firing shots, I think you would say. Who's coming in? Martin O'Neill.
And Sean Maloney.
Yeah. So it's very much a back to the future for Celtic, but that's very much their way. O'Neill, whose first reign at Celtic ended 20 years ago, returning, replacing Rodgers, who himself had returned to the job, to replace Neil Lennon, who himself had returned to the job.
It's like Inception, but with Celtic managers.
In between times, didn't Martin O'Neill appear on this podcast?
Yeah, he did.
Learned a lot. Now he's going to apply that to Celtic.
Well, you hope so, from Celtic's point of view.
But this is all building up so that Charlie's best friend can return to
Ange
Celtic.
Postecoglou.
Yeah.
I guess he's next in line.
I mean, I was in Glasgow last week, and all the Celtic fans were very excited about the prospect of Ange coming back, because his stock is still so high there.
Right.
To the point where I kind of think, was that a good idea? I feel like
why
if it
are
didn't
no
go
other
well.
managers available?
They can only appoint managers who've managed them before.
Okay.
That's the rule.
Right. Well, O'Neill is only in as an interim manager, but he's off to a great start, Tom. Is that right?
Yeah, 4-0 win at home to Falkirk. So they've
Wednesday night?
on Wednesday night. So they have trimmed Hearts' lead to 6 points.
All right, because Hearts only
Henrik
drew,
Larsson
I'm hearing.
with 3 of the goals.
Who? Really?
Henrik Larsson.
Yeah.
He's gone back with Martin O'Neill. That was part of the deal.
Excellent.
Get the old gang back together.
Nice. No Saturday lunchtime fixture this weekend again.
Another 8 o'clock. Too much.
It's the new Saturday
Too many.
lunchtime.
Can we just formally say, as a podcast, as nay an organisation, if I may speak on behalf of the Athletic, we are against 8 o'clock Saturday kickoffs because no one likes them. They're terrible for fans, and will someone think about the
And for
poor,
journalists.
suffering football journalists too?
Because they were introduced because they didn't want teams playing an away game in Europe and then playing the Saturday 12:30.
Right.
So they said, okay, we'll do it Saturday evening, which makes sense. But this doesn't fit into that.
Does it make sense?
Well, I think that's quite a lot to ask, and that was the big thing that Klopp used to rail against.
Yeah,
that you'd
but
have a
if you're gonna play
European.
on the Saturday. Does it help you that you're playing at 8 o'clock at night as opposed to lunchtime?
Supposedly it does. I think that is quite a different 12:30 compared to 8.
But also,
But this doesn't fit that. So,
weren't they doing 7 o'clock kickoffs with this time slot originally?
but they couldn't do that because then there's 5:30 on a. They could do that on a Sunday because of 4:30, but they couldn't on a Saturday. But yes, I don't understand why this one is, because Liverpool played and they made 10 changes. So I think they could have, they could have fitted this in, and Villa didn't play midweek.
All right. Anyway, 3 o'clock on Saturday, you've got 5 games, none of which you can watch if you're in the UK. Palace, Brentford, Forest against Man United, Burnley, Arsenal, Brighton, Leeds, and Fulham, Wolves. Ooh, that's interesting. At 5:30, Spurs against Chelsea. Woof. At 8 o'clock, then it is Liverpool against Villa. Sunday at 2 o'clock, West Ham face Newcastle. At 4:30 on Sunday, Man City, Bournemouth. At around 7 on Sunday, there's the Totally Football Show, live streaming us recording our Monday morning pod. And then on Monday evening, it's top 4 side Sunderland hosting Everton. Woof. So many questions about this weekend.
Yeah.
Are Liverpool going to lose again? Can Arsenal continue their relentless march? Can Bournemouth get a statement win at the Etihad? I almost want to start there, because there they are, the Cherries, second in the table, with pundits on this very podcast now making semi-ironic suggestions that they could go on to, but if Bournemouth were to win this game, I think there'd be a lot fewer people chuckling, which is saying something, because there were very few people chuckling in the first place.
This could be like that Leicester game when they went to the Etihad and won 3-0 in February 2016. And
Oh my God, you're saying it, Charlie.
Well, that was the game for a lot of people. They were like, holy heck, this might actually happen.
That's the expression I used at the time. So. All right. Well, history's not on their side, because Bournemouth have never, ever won at Man City. They've always lost in the Pep era. In fact, to even get a point for Bournemouth, you have to go back to May 1989. That was when the game was still played at Main Road. However, you could equally make the case that this Bournemouth is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, they've obviously been extremely good this season, and this is maybe a shootout between two of the best players in the league at the moment in Semenyo and Erling Haaland. So I think it's going to be good fun to watch.
Stopping Haaland feels like an important thing. Teams that have beaten City have stopped Haaland, Spurs and Villa.
So I'm trying to think, who's their second top goal scorer behind Haaland in the league? It's someone on 2? I can't remember who it is.
Really?
This new City are extremely dependent on Erling Haaland scoring goals, and he is one of the great players of his age and is scoring goals at an absurd rate. But it obviously invites the question, well, what happens when he doesn't score? And we saw what happened against Aston Villa last weekend, and the answer was they lost.
Second place is Reinders, Foden, Nunez and Cherki all on one.
Wow.
To be fair, I mean, Mamouche and Cherki have had injuries, haven't they? So, you'd think them getting back to what looks like...
And both scored last night.
Do you not remember that opening game of the season when Reinders scored that amazing goal and people were like, he's going to be... I'm not saying he's a bad player, he's a good player. But he's not scored since. I think people maybe got a little bit carried away on the opening day.
I think part of that is because
his role's changed.
Yeah, the injury problems in midfield for City mean that, ideally speaking, Rodri starts and Reinders can play with the handbrake off and get forward, which is his natural game. But because Rodri is out, you look at, I think Guardiola probably got his starting 11 wrong against Villa, but they went out without a proper defensive midfielder, and in that case, Reinders is obliged to rein himself in a little bit, and that's why we're not getting peak Reinders anymore.
Is Rodri available for this weekend?
I think Pep was saying it sounded like it was going to be touch and go.
Okay.
But it is strange. I mean, you look at the two main title favourites now, you'd probably say they are City and Arsenal, and City are so reliant on this one player. Arsenal, by contrast, their last 9 Premier League goals have been scored by 9 different players. I mean, we're talking poles apart, and both kind of have their merits and their flaws, because I'm sure Arsenal would love for Gyökeres to have come in and scored at, a crazy rate. Likewise, I'm sure City would want other players chipping in. What you would say in their favour, on the positive side, is that Haaland, he very rarely gets injured, because that would be your main worry with someone like that. What on earth happens if we lose this guy to injury who we're so reliant on? And the other is that he does tend to score at a pretty crazy rate pretty consistently. He can go about a goal a game over the course of a season, which is ludicrous. That said, that even if he were to do that, that would require a tailing off because he's scoring at such a mad rate at the moment.
All that raw milk and tomahawk steak.
Yeah.
And honey, which I believe
That's
he eats
the worry.
all together.
If there's a shortage of that, then they could be in real trouble.
Yeah.
Bournemouth, looking back to the opening weekend of the season, lost at Liverpool, but they haven't been defeated since. And this Sunday will actually be 1 year to the day since they beat City 2-1 in the game at the Vitality, which kind of kicked off that remarkable slump that Pep's side had.
Which is so reminiscent of now what's happening with Liverpool. I mean, in a similar, City were... I remember that feeling like such a big thing. City have lost a game. I think it was the first time they'd lost that season. They were, the 4-time champions, and then that one defeat just set in motion this complete collapse in a way that's kind of happened to Liverpool this season. That we were talking about them. They've won every game this season. This title could be a procession, and then one defeat and it changes.
Jay, you mentioned Semenyo. Their form player, arguably at the moment, though, is a young Frenchman by the name of Ile Junior Krupi.
Yes, son
4
of
goals in 3 appearances.
Son of Elie Krupi, Ivorian centre forward who played for Lorient and Nancy in the early noughties. Another goal scorer, who's arrived from Lorient. I think he actually signed in January, but then was loaned back to Lorient. Had a brilliant season with Lorient. Was their top scorer as they got promoted, the top scorer in Ligue 2. Has had to kind of bide his time with Evan Nielsen, inevitably starting every game. But it's been fantastic. Came off the bench, I think, to score a fantastic equaliser at Leeds with a really kind of difficult back post volley, and then started on his next 2 appearances, got a couple of goals against Palace in the 3-3 draw at Selhurst Park. Got a really nice goal in the win at Forest last weekend. I think there's a possibility that Evan Nielsen will be back for this game, so we might see Krupi back on the bench. But he's shown that he is a more than capable understudy.
All right, who's got Bournemouth for this one then?
Yeah, maybe.
No, I think
a bit more the draw. I think.
Yeah,
I think City will win. I think this might be a little bit of the they come back down to earth game, but it should be a really fun watch. I mean, and only Haaland has scored more Premier League goals than Semenyo this season. Quite a lot more. Haaland on 11, Semenyo on 6, joint with Igor Thiago. But Still.
Yeah, 4:30 on Sunday then. Man City against Bournemouth. Saturday at 8 o'clock. Liverpool face Aston Villa. Here we go again. Liverpool lost 4 Premier League games in a row. Villa have won 4 Premier League games in a row. I guess this is, from Slot's point of view, where we see if the changes that he made, the controversial team rotation that he made midweek was worth it, because if they go on and lose this one, ...
Yeah, I mean, that defeat does sort of confirm the Carabao Cup does seem to exist. Like, the final is great. The rest of it kind of exists just to compound existing narratives. Like, you basically just want to lose when no one's watching you in the Carabao Cup, because then it's completely forgotten about. But you lose at a time like this, and then it becomes this like huge thing. I don't imagine it's really going to have any effect, given that none of those players played. But I think they,
No, but what I'm saying, the fact that he rested them means that he's got players fresh for the visit of Aston Villa.
Sure, and of course it does add to the pressure, because then it's like, well, what was the point if they were going to lose anyway? You may as well go through in the Carabao. I mean, I don't know. As you guys were saying, feels like cycling through, trying to find different solutions.
The two big problems he's been facing, and he's talked about this, are the long passes and the long throws.
Yeah.
How are Villa equipped for that kind of thing?
Well, Villa can be very direct when they need to be, and I think one of Unai Emery's strengths as a coach is picking the right tactics for the opponents, and we saw that against Manchester City last weekend. He identified the fact that City were going to be a little bit light in central midfield in the absence of a recognised holder midfielder, that John Stones was going to have to step out onto the right flank and do a lot of the pressing. And Villa exploited that really well, kept their wide players really wide and just kept hitting City where it hurts. And, Emery, as a very pragmatic coach, is not guided by anything other than the desire to win football matches. So if he sees that his opponent has a weakness, he will just go for it. In terms of long throws, Matty Cash got a
I think someone does.
Throw on it somewhat. I mean,
I feel like it might be Amadou and Nana or something like that.
Yeah, one of them will have one. And then
I can't see Luca Dean throwing the ball far.
Maybe.
But I mean,
but on the exploits, but you mentioned that Bournemouth game at Liverpool earlier in the season, which Liverpool did win, but Bournemouth had so much joy kind of running in behind, and could well have taken something from that game. And I imagine Villa, with the pace they have in the attacking areas, would look to do something similar and exploit that. I mean, because that's the problem. Liverpool need to tighten up defensively, but with no Gay coming in, and they do look really short. And he also, from a perspective of like a defensive midfielder, I mean, what would they do? Play Endo or someone like that? I don't feel he's really at the level. So I don't know what Slot does to try and change it, or does he just say, well, eventually our great attacking players will, if you look at their last game against United, they could easily have scored more goals in that game. So does he just say, well, eventually our great attack will just overwhelm teams?
Villa, of course, nice and rested because they didn't have Carabao Cup this week. They got knocked out when no one was watching.
Yeah, exactly. By Brentford. I was just going to say, maybe Sancho will start this game because obviously he came off the bench against City for Buendia.
And then went back on the bench.
And then went back on the bench. But he did play pretty well. But Buendia, I think, is injured because he obviously came off in that game. But Buendia's, I think he scored 2 goals and 2 assists in his last 4 games. And I think what maybe people haven't mentioned is that he had a pretty nasty injury and sort of disappeared for a while, went on loan to Bayer Leverkusen. So to come back into the team and have that impact, I think he's sort of helped them on this recent run of good form.
Arsenal, meanwhile, the leaders are at Burnley, Saturday, 3 o'clock. I've got that kind of muscle memory twitch going, ooh, tough fixture, this is the Gunners, but it really isn't. It really isn't. The Clarets haven't beaten the Gunners in a league game at Turf Moor since
1973.
December 1973, which is a long time. In football, a long time in anything, really. And this
a great
Arsenal,
Christmas number 1.
Go on then.
Well,
Charlie.
a famous one anyway.
Famous one.
Merry Xmas, everybody, by Slade.
You're calling it Xmas?
I believe that's how it's written down.
It is written down, but then
yes,
Slade
they do
played
say
with
it.
the
But I feel that was deliberate
spelling.
on Slade's part.
What they didn't kick off Xmas?
No, I'm not suggesting they wrote
Maybe that's how
Xmas.
they recorded it initially, and like
I
a
wish it could be
record
Xmas
exec-
every day.
guys, call me mad. Should we maybe not mention the word Christmas at some point?
You might be onto something with it. How's the Halloween special being derailed into the Christmas takeover?
Well, Wizard's point was, I wish it could be Christmas every day, and that would be
yeah.
Anyway, that's enough of that kind of thing. This Arsenal are in no mood to give gifts or anything like that.
No.
Arsenal 2.0.
2.0. So you mentioned one of the remarkable stats, which is that last 9 Premier League goals scored by 9 different players. 11 different players have scored for Arsenal in the league this season. But equally, they've had 11 clean sheets in 14 matches. Only 3 goals conceded
one shot on target for their opponents in their last 3 Premier League matches.
Wow.
And have you seen that shot on target?
Incredible.
Which shot on target
It's a
was it?
scandal. It's basically a cross that Raya claims. And I think it's given a shot on target because Nketiah kind of nudges the ball with his head as Raya's catching it. But that's it for shots on target against in October.
There'll be Arsenal fans getting hot under the collar about that on social media as we speak.
I think they already have.
Yeah.
I think they're calling for like an adjudication panel.
Well,
for
rightly
shots
so.
on
I mean, this
target.
conspiracy has gone on long enough.
Well, they've not conceded a goal now in 10 hours in all competitions. Burnley, the latest team to try their luck. They do come fresh from back-to-back wins, although Arsenal can counter that with 4 Premier League wins in a row. In fact, Charlie, here's another stat. Arsenal have become only the second team in English league football history to go 100 games in all competitions without conceding 3 goals in a match.
Mm-hmm.
The other team to do that was Jose Mourinho's Man United, which confuses
Standard
me.
bearers for defensive
Not
excellence.
the answer I expected.
I'm surprised he hasn't referenced that in his it was one of my greatest achievements.
Now
Coming
that
second.
It's a weird
now that it's
stat.
out there, I'm sure
it's
he
a
will.
weird stat, but the kind of rider on it is that the last team to beat Arsenal scoring 3 goals.
Well, the last game I believe in which they conceded 3 goals, Arsenal won because I'm pretty sure it was Luton 3, Arsenal 4.
Correct.
Thumbs up from producer Charlie.
Correct. Anyway, did you see a 4-3 this weekend at Turf Moor?
No, I don't. I mean, the encouraging thing I would say for Burnley is that Arsenal, I think, will have very few attacking options because they've got a lot of injuries to attacking players, and Martinelli missed yesterday. So that really does reduce their options off the bench if Burnley are able to do what they did to Liverpool and have it 0-0 until stoppage time, which I imagine would be what they will try and do, because I think that's one of what Arsenal have managed to do, and this is largely because they've scored a lot of set piece goals, but they are missing a heck of a lot of attacking players. That for most teams, if they had this number of players out, it would be a kind of a crisis that everyone was talking about, or indeed if this was Arsenal last season or basically any other season. But if you think, Havertz, Madueke, Odegaard, now Martinelli and Jesus are all out, there's quite a lot of attacking options, and most of those have been out pretty much all season. So, yeah, I mean, maybe that becomes a factor, but I wouldn't imagine they'd concede 3, which would double their tally against for the whole season.
Look up Premier League's craziest fixture in the dictionary. And what does it say? It says Tottenham-Chelsea. At least it has for the last 2 seasons, Jay. You went along last year when it was Tottenham 3, Chelsea 4.
After Tottenham were 2-0 up after 10 minutes or so.
Up. Yeah. Ange Postecoglou was in charge in that game for Spurs, as he was the season before when, Charlie, you went along to see Tottenham 1, Chelsea 4, which is the game that really... A legend was born in that. That was the game when they went down to 9 men and tried to confuse Chelsea quite successfully by playing as if they had a 2-man advantage.
Yeah, that was the "It's just who we are, mate" game. That was honestly one of the craziest games I've ever been to. And it was, the term sliding doors is overused in football. And I actually think, and in general, and I actually think this in some ways wasn't a sliding doors, it was just a delaying of what was probably going to happen.
How nearly did they get away with it?
Well, it wasn't that they nearly got away with that, because I think eventually Chelsea were going to work out that maybe if you have a second man run, you can pick this lock. I mean, you had Eric Dyer and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, not known for their speed, playing centre-back and close to the halfway line. And basically Chelsea eventually realised, okay, maybe just delay our runs a little bit and we're going to have a lot of joy. And sure enough, Nicholas Jackson scored. It's rare you can score a hat-trick and have like a bad game, but he really did. He was really bad.
Regularly referred to as like possibly the worst hat-trick.
Yeah, I think it was like, I don't know.
Like a combined distance of 20 yards or something like that.
But it was like, I don't know, it was like you're playing against kids or something, and then you just decide to just go and score from like 2 yards, and you're like, like, well done, he's 13 kind of vibe. But no, the thing that, so Spurs came into this game, 10 games played under Ange in the league, won 8, drawn 2, top of the league. They went 1-0 up and were playing amazingly. It was kind of Ange ball at its zenith, and then they scored a second, but it was disallowed for a correct but marginal offside, and there was this moment, and that was at the end of this incredible passing move, and Son was just offside, and then it all just went spectacularly wrong. They lost 2 players to injuries, got 2 players sent off, lost the game 4-1, then went on a run including this one, I think they lost 4 out of 5 games and 1 draw in the other. And yeah, nothing was ever quite the same again.
Damn.
But it was, and I think there were 5 goals disallowed that night as well. It was the most VAR-y game. I mean, it was like every few minutes there was this long check for a red card or for a goal or something.
Because Caicedo scores a pretty good goal from memory.
And that was disallowed, wasn't it?
Then it's disallowed because Romero fouls someone in the build-up, and then he gets sent off, and Chelsea get a penalty, and you're like,
yeah, it was. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it was disallowed, but they got a penalty at the end of it. Something. Yeah.
I think the maddest Premier League game ever, and even by, I would say, maybe not a comfortable margin, but a significant margin. I can't think of another game that was quite like the scenario in the second half where Spurs are just standing almost in a straight line on the halfway line and challenging Chelsea to time a pass in behind, and Chelsea just repeatedly keep failing to.
But what happened as well? So Chelsea finally went 2-1 up, but then Spurs equalised, but it was disallowed for an offside. And it was Eric Dyer who scored this volley from a free kick coming in, and it was it was just so incredible. And it was not far off being onside, and if they had got something,
wasn't it also on a Monday night?
Yeah,
because I feel like everybody was watching that game. Like everyone was just so locked in. Whether they'd planned to at the beginning of the night, and then word of mouth spread that something nuts was going on.
Wow. Well, you're going along this Saturday, Jay.
Yes.
What are the chances it's going to be that much fun?
Well, it's important to point out that Spurs have a really bad home record.
Yes.
I think they've only won 3 of their last 18 games at home.
They picked up 1 point from the last 9 available.
Yeah, which goes across Postecoglou and goes across Thomas Frank. But then I was undercover on Saturday at Stamford Bridge for Chelsea Sunderland.
Yes.
And Chelsea were awful. The only player who stood out to me was Josh Champong. I thought he was excellent, very good at coming forward with the ball, was strong on the duels. I don't think it's a surprise that Sunderland's winning goal comes when he gets taken off for Tosin, who just didn't really know what to do with the long ball that was clipped over the top. And as Tom said earlier, Delap is needed because against Sunderland they used Mark Gui up front, Pedro dropped back, and it just looked so disjointed. There was no threat running in behind. And now they're going to have to cope without Delap on Saturday as well. So I think this might be a slightly more sensible game because Thomas Frank, Tottenham's defence has been so much better under him than it was with Postecoglou. But ask any Spurs fan and they'll tell you that they always just conceive of a weird way to lose this game. So don't rule any type of madness out. I don't think it will be 4-1, 4-3 levels of chaos, but something odd will happen.
Very nice. Chelsea, who have been this season on a run of 3 defeats in 4, then followed that with 4 wins in a row, but then followed that with defeat witnessed by Jay at home to Sunderland last weekend. All right, well, meanwhile, what's going on? Oh, hello.
Sorry, I should say, Maresca, who has been quite, forthright that he doesn't like long throw-ins.
Oh, yeah.
Versus Thomas Frank, who is arguably the poster boy of long throw-ins. So maybe that's what we should keep an eye out on.
If it's throw-ins you like, then why not watch Crystal Palace against Brentford, which is taking place on Saturday afternoon. Those are the 2 teams that put in the most long throws into the penalty area. Who does it better? Find out Saturday afternoon at 3 at Selhurst Park. Down the bottom, you got Nottingham Forest, now 18th against Man United. West Ham are in 19th, host Newcastle. And Fulham, who are only 1 place above the bottom 3 in 17th, face last place Wolves. Wolves are the only winless team in English League football. Fulham are on a 4-match losing streak in the league and are currently in their lowest position in the league under Marco Silva since he came in. What looks tricky is maybe West Ham against Newcastle, because West Ham may not be bottom of the table, but nobody is as bad as they are at home, yet to take a single point at the London Stadium. They've already had 4 games as well under Nuno and have yet to win.
Yeah, no discernible Nuno bounce. And it was an appointment that made sense in that post David Moyes, West Ham have sort of tried to move away from the David Moyes model. And with initially Julian Lopetegui and then Graham Potter, try and play slightly more expansive football. It feels like this is the kind of cycle that West Ham have been trapped in for about 20 years. Like, find a coach who's unspectacular, generally British, homegrown, gets reasonably good results, but the football's kind of boring. Right, we've had enough of that. Let's get in some more exciting. Person who's not as exciting isn't as good at getting results, so you go back to square one. Obviously, Nuno is not a British coach, but he has quite kind of British sensibilities. But they've been awful. They were terrible at home to Brentford in their most recent home game, lost 2-0, and Brentford's last goal goes in front of a stadium that's not even a third full at that point, and it felt like a real nadir. And then they were dreadful again away at Leeds, and Nuno, making these curious selection decisions, playing fullbacks on opposite flanks, and various other hard to understand choices. And you kind of assume at some point, because that sort of David Moyes era DNA must still be in this group of players, he's going to find a way of bringing that out of them. But so far, he has not.
They've got the worst defensive record in the division. I don't know if goals from corners is important in the Premier League this season. Figures just aren't available. But they have conceded 9 so far, which is far and away the most that any team has allowed. 6, in fact, is the next total. Behind them. So, yeah, Magpies, for their part, yet to win on the road in the Premier League this season. But they'd fancy their chances, you feel. Forest hosting Manchester United that Saturday at 3 o'clock. 180 minutes potentially till the Clippers come out.
Yes, yeah.
Forest winless in their last 8 in the Premier League. Yikes. Nuno's old side. So that's a bit of a worry. They haven't scored a single goal in 448 minutes in the league.
I do think that, just looking at this, Nuno, and I thought this, in relation to Ange, you absolutely need, as a new manager, when you're coming in, and this is pertinent to United as well, that almost like the worse the team is doing, the more it's like wow, what a job he's got to do. And I think Nuno has enough of that goodwill at West Ham. Ange didn't, and that's why he went after, whatever it was, 5 league games.
And Sean Dyche?
I don't think Sean Dyche has that. I think Dyche is not in that bracket. And I think if things go as badly for him at the start as they did for Ange, then questions are going to be asked. Yes, there's a different context of he's, got Nottingham Forest heritage in a way that Ange didn't, and Ange replaced a popular manager. But you saw that, Amorim, I think, got a lot of that goodwill, certainly early on at United, of the worse they were, the more it was almost like, wow, what a job Amorim's got on his hands, rather than shouldn't they be doing a bit better by now?
Is there a scenario where Dyche gets sacked, Nuno gets sacked, and Nuno returns to the City ground in just the wildest sequence of events?
Yeah.
Dyche at least does have that win against Porto in his first home game, which was an impressive win against high-caliber opposition at home. And I think the fact that, he is a sort of a child of the club in a way, a local lad, ticks a lot of those boxes. He's had that kind of moment of communion, which I think felt like a bit of a sort of, a washing away of the Ange era. It was remarkable, clearly the Postecoglou era at Forest was a complete disaster, but it was remarkable the extent to which Postecoglou succeeded in transforming Forest football. You looked at kind of average possession statistics while he was there, and Forest, were right up there with like the most sort of possession-focused teams in the league. And, Dyche will now have to unpick that. Having to start off in the league away at Bournemouth was very much less than ideal first opposition. I suspect that off the back of that Porto win, they will be a tougher proposition at home. But, in for Man United in town, so who knows?
We shall see. Intriguing match, that one. Also, Fulham Wolves, that's 17th against 20th. And looks a big one. Looks a big one, that for both
Marco
teams.
Silva, given, what a great job he's done, and then has a summer like this where there's so little transfer business and he's just expected to keep them punching above their weight. I think he has earned the right to have a bit more backing. Yeah, it's a big game for them, but obviously a huge game for Wolves, and you do wonder how much longer Vitor Pereira is going to stagger on for.
Right. It's 2 Portuguese managers face-to-face. Got 2 Germans, of course, face-to-face in Brighton Leeds, which is Saturday, 3 o'clock.
There's only a point between them in the table, which I'm quite surprised by.
I'm surprised by that too, Joe.
Brighton are on 12 points, Leeds are on 11.
Wow. Do you know, that's like when you open an atlas.
I'm just squinting. No, that's right.
Well, you know, when you open up an atlas and you go, good Lord, that's where Copenhagen is. Or what do you mean Denmark?
Even the United Kingdom sometimes.
But often,
you know,
yeah.
That's where Stevenage is.
Right. What other shocking facts about the table can you tell us, Jay?
Or like the fact that Norwich is north of Birmingham.
What?
Insane.
You heard it here
Lines
first.
of latitude are surprising. The map of the United Kingdom.
Right.
Places that you think are instinctively northern,
here's another
which are
one.
not as northern as you might think.
I'm not sure where, but New York is south of somewhere, like Lisbon, something like that.
South of La Paz. You won't believe it instinctively, but look it up. Of course it
Are
is.
you looking at the
in terms
table,
of-
Jay, or not?
I'm
terms of
trying to find
altitude.
something
Oh,
quirky, but-
remarkable. Okay, let's have a quick look at the table.
Let's have a look at the map of the UK.
I mean, objectively, Sunderland being fourth, but then I think we've all clocked that. And they're the one team that we haven't really talked about because they're playing Monday night, hosting Everton at the Stadium of Light. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there.
3 wins in 4.
Noah Siddiqui for Sunderland. Keep an eye on him. I thought he was excellent against Chelsea. I
Excellent,
think he's
do
only
that.
19 years old as well.
I'll do that. Excellent. Monday night football then is Sunderland against Everton. Sunday night, we'll be here with Totally Football Show, rounding up everything that's happened so far at the weekend. That's live on our YouTube page, or you can hear the podcast on Monday morning. Before that, just to mention that there'll also be a Totally Extra dropping on Saturday, in which we're going to go and look back on the greatest tournament ever played, Euro 2000. Wow. Goals galore, and one game in which no goals were scored, which was almost the best of the lot. Anyway, that's on Saturday. For now, I think it's time to say thank you very much, Charlie Eccleshare.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay Harris. Good luck with your mysterious assignation.
Thank
Say
you.
hi
It was
to Thomas Frank from us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Many thanks to Jake and Charlie in the booth. And you, listener. We'll see you again soon. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.